Hello, and welcome to the Ultimate Retirement Training. My name's John Baynham. I'm a financial advisor with the Retirement Income Group. I'm a chartered investment manager. I'm also, life, health, disability insurance licensed. I've been managing investments and protecting Canadians for about the last 5 years. And previously, I was a wealth management advisor catering to high net worth clients at one of the big 5 banks in Canada. A little bit more about me, like some of my hobbies include golfing. I like to go camping. Every year, me and my little brother, we actually go on a portaging trip, backcountry camping in Algonquin Park. I'm also a big Formula One and soccer fan. And what we're going to be talking about today is how you can get the tools and skills you need to enable to enjoy really live life to the fullest and have a fantastic, comfortable retirement. So when we get started is, how do we use money? So we use money essentially in 3 ways. Is one, to enjoy life today. So that's, going out with friends, going to the movies, buying a car. Another thing that we use money for is to enjoy life in the future. And that would be, like saving for retirement, buying a home, down payment for a home. One of the other things we do as well is we help others enjoy life. And what that would look like would be maybe making contributions or donations to a charity, maybe helping, your parents or children, save for university. Money can really feel complicated. It's a very emotionally loaded topic. But what we're really going to talk about today is the basics and how to get you powerfully set up, to take on your retirement. So one of the big things that people kind of mistake is, your financial success is not determined by how much money you make or how big your salary is. It's really about what you're doing with your money. Are you saving? Are you, what are you actually doing with it? What are your habits? And what we're actually going to be going through today are 8 habits that financially successful people are doing constantly, all the time, so that you can take those on in your own life. So the first habit we're going to talk about is also the most important habit, because none of the other things we're talking about are going to be possible if you're not doing this. So the number 1 habit is spend less than you earn. And I'm going to repeat that again. Spend less than you earn. If you're not spending less than what you earn, it's going to be impossible for you to pay down debt, to save money for retirement, buy that house in the future. Everything that we're talking about really starts from this foundation of spend less than what you're earning. More money, no matter how much you earn, more money is not going to solve your financial problems if you do not master this habit. So I'm going to say it one more time because I know how important it is, and it's spend less than you earn. Habit number 2, automate your savings. Don't rely on, having to remember every month to be investing or whatnot, right? You want to be, paying yourself first, automate your savings, make sure that's happening automatically month to month. You don't even want to be thinking about it. You just want to start investing and saving, right off of your paycheck. And we're going to give you a couple examples about, how this works. So one of the things is, even if you don't have a huge salary, somebody who has an income of $49,000, over 40 years is about a $2 million income, $1.9 million of income over that entire 40-year period. If you were to save 15% of your $49,000 salary, you would have almost $1 million at the end of that 40 years. It'd be about $930,000, if you want to be more exact. But, just by saving 15% of your income, you can still have that $1 million investment account. And how does that actually work? That of that $1 million, only 10% is actually going to come from what you saved. That 15% you're putting away every single year. But where you're actually going to get the big money in the returns to get to that $1 million is in the interest that you earned and the interest that you earned on that interest. And that's referred to as compound interest, right? So, another way to kind of go into that is the money that you're saving is going to earn interest when you put it into your bank account or your investment account. And that money that you earned is then going to get reinvested, and that money is going to then earn extra returns. And that's actually where most of the value of your investment account is going to come from over time. So the next slide that we're going to talk about is, saving for your future self. So how much are you actually going to need to save to get to that $1 million at retirement? And one of the amazing things about compound interest is that it works really well giving a very long period of time. So when you look at the chart on your presentation, you can see this is actually the monthly savings you need to get to $1 million and what age you need to be when you begin to start saving. So as you can see, a 20-year-old only needs to start saving $361 a month to get that $1 million investment account. However, the longer you wait, the more amount monthly you're going to need to be saving. So by the time you're 30, in order to get that same $1 million, you're going to have to be saving almost $700 per month. If you wait until you're 40, you need to be saving almost $1,500 a month. And if you wait until you're 60, you're going to need to save about $14,000 per month. So it's not just about automating your savings, it's also start early. Take advantage of compound interest, because the longer that your money stays invested for, the more you're going to take advantage of those extra returns and the compound interest. On the next slide, we can actually see another example of starting early and what that impact is. So we've got two people. One is Mr. Blue and Mr. Green. And Mr. Blue starts saving at age 18, and he starts saving $2,000 a year for 10 years. And he gets a 7% return, and when he's 65, his investment account is about $370,000, or $386,000. The person in green, he starts saving at age 30, and he saves the exact same amount per year, $2,000. Now he saves from 30 to 65. So he's saving for 35 years, and he gets the exact same return as Mr. Blue. Now at age 65, he actually only has $295,000 in his investment account. So what you can see here is really the impact of starting early and taking advantage of compound interest, because the person in blue only saved for 10 years. He put $20,000 total in his investment account, and he actually has more money saved than the person who invested for 35 years at $2,000 per year and contributed over $70,000 to his investment accounts. So I can't say it enough. You want to start early. The earlier you start, the easier it will be to get to your retirement goals and your retirement dreams. Habit number 3, give each of your dollars a job. Another way that this could be described to be have a budget or a cash flow plan. And we actually gave you a great example of how to create a budget and your cash flow plan in your Ultimate Retirement Workbook. So you can go through and you can download that immediately, and you can start going through. And some of the things that we're going to look at, in your cash flow plan is, how do I actually break this down? So I'm making, a certain amount of income, but how much should I be spending on certain things? And what we kind of, as a general guide, you want to be looking at, about 20% of your income is going to go to your financial priorities. So, saving, investing, things like that. 50% of your income is going to go to your essentials. And one of the things that shocks a lot of people is that, especially living in, if you live around Toronto or Vancouver, only 35% of your income should be going towards your housing costs. That's your rent or your mortgage payments or whatnot, right? And about 30% would go to your lifestyle. And that's just a recommended budgeting. So, when you go through and you build your budget, you want to look to be seeing, am I kind of fitting around these recommendations? The essentials, the financial priorities, and the lifestyle. And again, that can be found in your Ultimate Retirement Workbook. Habit number 4 is review where your money has gone and where it needs to go. And this really gets help. That's why you need to build a budget, so that you can actually see, what am I spending your money on? And then once you've done that, you can actually review and kind of say, so where did my money go? And where does it need to go? Some examples that just from working with clients that I've had, everybody has, a large cable or cell phone bill. Entertainment, going out, eating out, going to restaurants. Sometimes it's investment costs. And you want to look at, how much am I spending on these things? And is that really where I want my money to be going? Or is there something that is more important to me or that I'm more committed to, where that could be going, whether it's an investment account or going on a trip or saving on a down payment for a house? So really reviewing, what exactly do I want my money to be working towards? This is a study that was done in and the United States. But as you can see from the slide, is did you experience a hidden fee in the past 2 years? So you've got 37% of people experienced hidden fees in banking, about the same in credit cards, and about 24% noticed hidden fees in investment services. And I mean, I work in the industry, and I could almost say that if you're looking at a hidden fee, how do you know if you've experienced a hidden fee? That number could actually be quite a bit higher. So really reviewing, what am I actually paying for? What are the terms and conditions of these products? So if we go to the next slide, we can see exactly how can these hidden costs impact my life and my retirement. So one of the biggest ones that we can look for is your investment costs. So this is an example of if you were to invest $100,000 and get a 6% return over 25 years. Over that time period, your $100,000 would grow to about $430,000. However, over that same time period, if you're paying 2% in investment fees, you actually only have $260,000 at the end. So you actually lose up to $170,000 to investment fees. So it's really important, just reviewing, what are the hidden costs, and what am I paying for things like banking, investment fees, cable, cell phone, because those things have a big impact, to your retirement. And you can look at where it makes sense, am I getting the value for the money that I'm paying? So the next habit is write down your goals and what you are committed to. So what I'm committed to is I'm committed to having financial freedom in my life. And how I'm going to get that is by achieving these goals, and that's having an emergency fund, 3 to 6 months of my income. I want to retire at 60 and have at least $1 million in investments. I want to take one trip per year. I want to buy a home or a condo in the next 2 years, and I want to pay down all of my credit card debt. The next step is to go on your financial goals worksheet, which is part of the Ultimate Retirement Workbook. And you're going to put in those goals, and you're going to actually put in the actions that are going to have you fulfill on those goals. So you can go through the timing, by when do you need to reach, your specific goals? So when am I going to pay off my credit card debt? By when am I going to be able to have that down payment for the house of my dreams? What are the priorities? How much is it actually going to cost you to put that down payment on that house? Or how much is your emergency fund need to be? How close are you to that goal? What extra steps can you take to make that goal a reality? And then what actions you're also going to be taking. So all of those things are fitted on this financial goals worksheet. And again, you want to work through that, and you can work through that and talk to a financial advisor and see whether you're actually on track with all of the actions that you're taking to fulfill on all of your goals. So this is really important because this is somebody that everybody steps over, and that is really being intentional about your financial goals and actually writing them down on paper, putting it into existence and making sure you are actually on track to achieve all of those goals and you're taking those necessary actions. So this is a really, really valuable exercise, and I highly recommend that you go into your workbooks and you work through this, sooner rather than later. Get started today. So the next habit is to, take risks, but we don't just want to take any risk. We want to take, intentional risks. Why do we want to take risks and actually invest our money as opposed to just saving our money? And that is inflation. And inflation is one of the biggest hidden costs that we have today. And inflation, what that is, it's the general increase in the price of goods and services and a fall in the purchasing value of your money over time. So a simple way of explaining that is essentially the prices of things that we buy every day, they're going up, and the amount of things that our dollar can buy actually decreases. And we can actually see that from the chart here. A coffee back in 1935 used to cost about 83 cents. And that same kilogram of coffee in 2008 costs almost $13. A liter of milk used to be 10 cents. Now it's, over $2. So you can see, over periods of time, especially longer periods of time, there's a significant impact in how much our money can actually buy us in goods and services. So because inflation is actually a cost, it's actually a negative line item when you're looking at your investments. So if you go to the next, as we go to the next slide, you're going to see your 1 year rate of return on your investments. If you were to make 5% and inflation was 1.5%, your actual return after inflation is only 3.5%. So this means like the real value of your money only grew by 3.5%. And that's not the last of it either, because we haven't taken into account taxes. So if you're actually in the highest marginal tax bracket, your 3.5% return actually could be as low as 1.6%, right? And that's why we're actually going to talk a little bit more about taxes later on in the presentation, but you want to be taking into account all of these different things. These are things that are impacting your retirement and your investment returns. So you want to be careful, right? You want to be making sure that you're not just putting money necessarily in a savings account in a low interest rate environment. And if we look at why I just said that, on the next slide is it's really the impact of low interest rates on your investments. You used to be able to get with simple bank products, if you look at the slide here, in 1999 you used to be able to get a GIC for about 4.8%. For 2017, the average GIC rate was only 1.39. Why did I just say that we want to look at investing your money over saving your money? And the reason is low interest rates. It's kind of like what's happened over interest rates over the last couple decades. So you can see, in 1999, the average GIC rate was about 4.81%, and by 2017, that had dropped to about 1.39%. Now the funny thing is that in 2017, inflation was actually 1.87%. So that's actually higher than the average GIC rate. So you were actually, if you were saving money using like these low risk interest bearing investments, you were actually losing money every single year. And that's a problem for anyone who's saving, retirees, people just starting out, because it's become a lot more difficult to have your money increase higher than inflation. So the question is, kind of like how do we how do we do that? Like, how do we fight inflation? And the answer is, kind of building a diversified portfolio. So it's not just putting all of your money into a savings account. It's putting things into, like stocks and bonds and, building that diversified portfolio. So the next slide, shows the growth of a dollar over a 60-year time period. And you can see, that some of the riskier assets classes have grown a lot, and some of the not as risky asset classes don't grow as much. But what I want to do is kind of talk to an advisor about your risk tolerance and, kind of how, what would be the appropriate way for you to invest. But you want to look to, not necessarily just putting your money into a savings account, because you want to be, again, beating inflation over a long period of time. The next habit is avoid unnecessary taxes. We all live in Canada. We have some of the highest tax rates in the world, and we all have to pay our fair share, but we don't want to pay more than what our fair share is. The government has given us tools to be more tax efficient, to save for retirement, and we want to make sure that we're actually utilizing those to the best of our ability. The two main ones that pretty much everybody would be using would be your RRSP, or your registered retirement savings plan, or your tax-free savings account. Now your registered retirement savings plan, most often referred to as just an RRSP, is a vehicle we use to defer tax. So that means that money that you invest in your RSP does not get taxed today. It gets taxed when you pull it out or when you withdraw the money. So if you were to, let's say you were to take $10,000 and put it into your RRSP, the government would not tax that $10,000 until you get to retirement, until you're 60, 65, and you go to start taking that money out. Then they're going to start paying taxes. And a lot of the times you actually get a tax refund when you invest into your RSPs. And that's paying you back for taxes that you already paid on that money. You're not refunded, like you still have to pay tax on that money when you're withdrawing. The other option that we have is the tax-free savings account. And I kind of don't like the name, because a tax-free savings account can actually hold a lot of different types of investments. It can actually hold all of the same types of investments as your registered retirement savings plan or your RRSP. But the tax-free savings account, it can really be used for tax-free investing. So the money that you put into your tax-free savings account is money you've already paid tax on, so you don't get a refund for it, but all of the investment gains that you get are all tax-free. In what scenario Does an RRSP make sense? And in what scenario does a tax-free savings account make sense for me to start investing my money? So if you look at the next slide here, we've got both account types and we've got two investments. So in both scenarios, we're taking $10,000 and we're looking to invest it. So if I take $10,000 and put it into my RRSP, because I'm not paying any income tax on that $10,000, the full $10,000 gets invested. Over my retirement, if that investment, we're saying that investment would grow to about $50,000 when I'm 65. And then so that same $10,000 though, if I were to invest in a tax-free savings account, which is the line below, I'm going to have to pay 30% tax on that money. So $3,000 is going to go to the government. And that's why you see, your after-tax investment in the tax-free savings account is actually smaller than the RSP because you've already paid tax on that money. Now, if we were to invest that money the same as the RSP and we were 65, that same return would lead us to have $35,000 of income. Now, we're going to go to the withdrawals. So what happens when I actually go to take this money out of my account? And this is where we can really determine, whether an RSP or a tax-free savings account makes sense for you. So if you were to withdraw from your RSP and you're retired and you're in a tax bracket of 20%, you would actually end up after taxes with $40,000. That's actually $5,000 higher than if you were to withdraw from your tax-free savings account. Because remember, the tax-free savings account, everything that you withdraw from it is tax-free. All of your investment gains grow tax-free. However, if you're in your RSP and you withdraw to 30% tax bracket, which is actually the same tax bracket that you were in when you contributed the money, you actually have the same amount of money as if you were in your from withdrawing from your RSP as you are from withdrawing from your tax-free savings account. And if we look at if you were to withdraw from a 40% tax bracket, you actually have less money from your RSP than if you were to invest in a tax-free savings account. And so one of the other things as well, with your tax-free savings account is that withdrawals from a tax-free savings account actually don't impact your government benefits. So that's actually, pretty significant when you become retired because a lot of government benefits and programs are actually determined. Your eligibility is determined based on your taxable income. So withdrawals from your tax-free savings account actually won't impact a lot of those programs and benefits that you get from the government. However, withdrawals from your RSP will. So the general rule of thumb is that if you're going to be in either the same tax bracket today as you are when you retire, or if you're going to be in a higher tax bracket when you retire than what you're in today, you might want to look at investing inside of a tax-free savings account as opposed to an RRSP. Or, however, if you're going to be in a lower tax bracket when you retire because you're not working, you're not making as much money, than what you are within the tax bracket you're in today, then an RRSP might be a more effective vehicle to you. And what you want to do is you want to talk to a professional and have a plan created and kind of to see what is the projections, like where am I expecting to be when I retire, and they can help you work through which investment vehicle is the right one for you. So the next habit is protecting yourself and your loved ones. And so the question is, how do I do that? And that can be done with quite a few things. So you've got life insurance, income insurance, which could be disability or critical illness. It could be building an emergency fund. It could look at, there's a lot of different things that go to protecting you and your loved ones. But you really want to create, that stability in your financial situation so that no matter what happens to you, you and your family are taken care of. Whether you lose your job, whether you get sick, whether something you unexpectedly pass away, no matter what happens, your financial situation is going to be okay. You want to really create, a really strong, stable foundation for your financial situation, and that's what we're going to talk about next. So when we go to the next slide here, you're going to see the financial planning pyramid. So the financial planning pyramid, when you look at the base, we're looking at our financial plan as the first thing, so we actually know what is going on and where do we want to be going, how are we actually going to deal with all of these things. You also want to make sure you have a will or a power of attorney. Particularly if you've got, kids or you're a little older, about to retire, making sure all of those documents are set up for your estate. The next section is, dealing with events that are out of your control. So things that are out of your control would be, like becoming dependent, having a serious health issue. I've had clients, a lot of clients who've, they've gotten cancer or, various, very serious illnesses. And not only is it really sad and it's really difficult and stressful to deal with that, there's also the financial impact of not being able to work. And I've had clients in the past who not only having to deal with having something like cancer, but also having to move out of their homes because now they can't afford to pay the mortgage because they weren't actually set up financially, to handle that impact to their income. So events out of your control, like becoming dependent, suffering a serious health issue, potentially suffering a serious illness like cancer, having a premature death in your family. These are things that are going to knock you off your track to having that $1 million retirement and living the life of, financial freedom, living your life to the fullest, having that comfortable retirement, because these have a big financial impact. And so what we want to talk about is, how are we actually going to protect ourselves, and solve that problem of, what happens if something unexpected comes and takes me off track financially? How can I prevent that from happening? What can I do to fight back? The next step on the financial planning pyramid is, things you can control. So, that's, again, saving for your emergency funds, your personal savings, reducing your debt, maybe it's saving for your child's education, saving for retirement. And then the very last thing you want to look at, is maximizing your wealth, and preserving your estate. Now that we've gone over the habits of financially successful people, I've got one or two really important, just quick tips that I've seen over the years from working with people in the industry. So one of them would be, paying off debt. So there's something called the debt snowball, which essentially is, paying down the highest interest debt first. So for a lot of people, that's your credit cards that have, 20% or more interest, every single year. You also want to prioritize, what is the most stressful debt? So is there something, seeing that account balance every single month, that bill coming in, that's kind of stressing you out? Focus on paying that off as well so that you can have that, peace of mind and freedom and ease that you're working towards your goals. Another one would be save and invest. I know we talked a lot about earlier, but spend less than you earn and put that money to work for you. Start taking advantage of compound interest. The sooner you start, the better off you'll be. So another tip would be to ask for help. If you need advice or you want to ask someone some questions, we are here to help. If you're looking to take action and you just don't know who to contact, just let us handle that for you, and we will help, have you in contact with an expert advisor who can help you get on track to all of your financial goals. One of the most common things that clients want to know are what kind of programs and things are out there to help me purchase a home. What can I do to help save towards my down payment? And there are actually some great government programs and incentives to help you start to purchase a home. And one of them is the RSP Home Buyers Plan. The RSP Home Buyers Plan is essentially, they will allow you to withdraw money from your RSP and pay no taxes, and use that to purchase a qualifying home. So you have to actually be, for that plan, you have to be considered a first-time home buyer. And you can go, we'll have a link in the presentation where you can maybe get some more info on the government website. But essentially, if you qualify as a first-time home buyer, you'll actually be allowed to withdraw money from your RSP and use that towards your down payment. Now, just so you also are aware, you have to pay that money back. So it's essentially a tax-free loan that you're taking from your RSP, and then you have to pay that back over time, over about 15 years. The details are in the workbook. And another new government program is the Home Buyers Incentive. And that's essentially where the government will do a shared equity mortgage with you. But that is something that you could qualify for. And if you're thinking about buying a house, it's a new program. So you want to make sure that you're getting all of the details and you really understand what you're getting yourself into. So talk to a professional about whether you qualify or whether that program will actually make sense for you. There also will be more details, again, in the workbook for you to do some extra research on that. Yeah, so finally, we're going to talk about investing. So we're going to go through, what are a couple different types of investments, and, maybe what should I be looking for in an investment portfolio. So first is, what is an investment fund? There are two main types of investment funds that people look at. One would be a mutual fund, and the other would be an exchange-traded fund or an ETF. So a mutual fund, it's a financial vehicle. It's essentially a pool of money that gets collected from a whole bunch of different investors, and then all of those investors essentially hire a money manager. So you have a professional money manager that's managing investments over a pool of hundreds or thousands of people. Mutual funds have specific mandates that will guide the money manager on how to invest the money. So they could be investing in certain sectors, having a diversified portfolio. The funds could be higher risk or lower risk. The funds are generally divided into several different kinds of categories that'll represent what the underlying investments are. So you might have a bond fund, which would invest in fixed income securities, or an equity fund, which would generally invest in stocks and things like that. You could have a balanced fund that would invest in a mixture of the two. And the funds will have a certain objective. The investment funds or mutual funds also charge annual fees that are called expense ratios. And in some cases, they can also charge commissions, which can affect the overall return. So let's have a really quick example of what a mutual fund fee is. So the management expense ratio is generally broken down into three parts. What the fund manager gets, what the advisor's firm would get, and then taxes and expenses. So in this example, the average Canadian, pays about, for a mutual fund, 2.23%. So we've got, 2.25% here broken down on the chart. So an example would be, of that percentage fee, a fund manager might get 1%, the advisor's firm might get 1%, and then 0.25% might go to taxes and expenses. And that's kind of what that money is going towards. So one of the things with your mutual funds that I hear all the time from clients is that, my financial advice is free, or, my financial planner works for free, or my advisor works for free, or I don't pay them anything if they're investing in mutual funds. And the answer is you actually are paying for that advice. Your advisor's firm, the company they work for, are actually getting some of the fees that you're paying in the mutual fund. The fees are also going to the actual professional money manager managing the fund. So you want to make sure that you're getting value not only from the money manager, but also from the advisor and the firm that you're working with if you're investing in mutual funds, because you are paying for both. One of the things about ETFs that are different from a mutual fund is that in ETF, the share price fluctuates throughout the day. So it's traded live on the exchange just like a stock. Whereas a mutual fund, one of the unique things about that is that it only trades once per day at the end of the day. So one of the things you have to be wary with ETFs is that, again, that price is changing constantly. And when is the best time going to be to buy or sell, that fund. Now, ETFs, just like mutual funds, can contain all different types of investments. And generally, an ETF will have a lower expense ratio, than a mutual fund on average. However, that is not necessarily the case. So you want to speak to an advisor and really understand, how are the fees working? What am I paying? Again, because buying an ETF, it may or may not save you money, and it may or may not be the right investment decision for you. Okay. So if you want more information on, how do I choose the proper investments? What's right for me? Mutual funds, ETFs. How do I get global reach? How do I avoid, home bias, which is investing too much of my money in Canada? How do I actually get access to companies in the US and all around the world? How do I know that I'm not taking on too much risk in my investment portfolio? And that's really why you want to work with an advisor. To have those questions answered and to create an investment plan or strategy to make sure that you're taking advantage of everything that's available to you in Canada. If you want to make a change and impact your financial future, we are giving you access to the right financial advice. Download the workbook and book your time with a financial advisor today. Listen, a year from now, you're going to wish that you had started today. And I want to thank you all for participating in the Ultimate Retirement Training, and I look forward to seeing you and working with you in the future.